Hi everyone, I'm Sin from ArtScience Museum in Singapore. Thank you for joining us in the second talk organized as part of a program of online conversations accompanying the exhibition Radical Curiosity in the Orbit of Buckminster Fuller. Presented at ArtScience Museum in co-production with Fundación Telefónica Madrid and guest curators Rosa Pera and Jose Luis de Vicente, the exhibition considers the profoundly relevant legacy of one of the greatest minds of our times, Richard Buckminster Fuller. Fuller's collaborations with some of 20th century's major creators, thinkers, architects, and artists to design a more inclusive and sustainable world has continued to inspire contemporary innovations across multiple disciplines. Best known for his geodesic dome, which later inspired Singapore's dual Changi Airport, Fuller's true impact on the world today lies in his influence on generations of designers, architects, scientists, and artists working to create a more sustainable planet. Today's program is headlined by Charu Kokate, partner at Architecture and Urban Design Studio Safdie Architects and the director of the firm's Singapore office, who led on and oversaw the construction of iconic complex structures, including Marina Bay Sands Integrated Resort, which ArtScience Museum is part of, Johor Changi Airport, and Sky Habitat Residential Towers. Based in Singapore, Charu leads efforts across the region. A true advocate for the high-level construction practices, Charus is integral to delivering projects that embody their original design intent. She serves as a pivotal point of contact for clients, contractors, and consultants, from project inception all the way through completion. An active mentor to emerging industry professionals as well, Charu has a special interest in helping women in design shape their professional growth. In addition to public talks, lectures, and media appearances, Charu often serves as a design judge internationally and in Singapore. We're going to be in dialogue with Charu today to talk about innovation and idealism through some of the studio's truly remarkable projects and discuss the role of collaboration in urban design and architectural practice. It gives me great pleasure welcoming Charu Kokate to today's conversation. Hi, Charu. Thank you for joining
Hi,
us
Sin.
today.
Hi, Sin. So nice to see you.
So first of all, Charu, I'd love to talk about your story, and the beginning always feels like a nice place to start. When or how did your interest in journey and, when or how did your interest in journey in architecture begin?
Um, when I was growing up in India, my father decided to construct our house. You know, we were living in a nice apartment in the city, but he decided to build this house. And he had an architect friend, and he would take me to visit his office. And I was so thrilled to see a miniature model of our building, of our house, and the color pencils and so much stuff that I was very attracted to it. And I'm still attracted to color pencils, collection of pencils. So that's how it began. And actually, it did make a difference to me because all of a sudden we lived from an apartment. We moved into this house with big yards and trees and all that stuff, and it really made a difference to the way we were growing up. And I think somewhere in your subconscious mind, it stays that space matters. You know, the space around you matters. And I think that's how it began. From my university to meeting architects, I've met so many different architects and so many different interesting people that really made me believe that that's the way to do it. You know, architecture is the way to do it.
Well, architecture is always a product of its time. Can you describe how your architectural practice, perhaps in relation to your work with Safdie Architects as well, have evolved over the years?
Let me tell you a very small story. More than 50 years ago, in the 1960s, in Montreal, Canada, a young student in his early 20s, decided to rethink how an apartment building should be. It was his master's thesis. So instead of breaking, he decided to look at the units or the flats or apartments very differently than the way people look at it. Usually apartment buildings are this orthogonal structure with apartments that you see in Singapore, right? He decided to do it differently. He decided to rearrange the blocks three-dimensionally, basically rearrange them in such a way that the blocks would create this geometry that would result in terraces and big balconies that would allow the apartment users or the people who live there with roof gardens, with maximum natural light filtering through, constant flow of fresh air. And that really changed the way people looked at housing. This visionary designer is none other than our mentor and the founder of our company, Mr. Moshe Safdie. And this was like more than 50 years ago. So this basic principle that Moshe followed about natural light, ventilation, basically it was rooted in his metaphor for everyone a garden. Moshe truly believed that everyone should have access to gardens, natural air, connection to nature, and that really is the philosophy of our office. And we as a team, because it's such a simple idea, which really sees architecture like a generous act of connecting to nature, connecting to the outdoors, and also kind of creating a vibrant public life. People have a more healthier way of looking at things. So that's our office's philosophy that we've taken, and we're implementing it to the different types of buildings. It's not just limited to just to residential buildings. So we are globally active as a company. Safdie Architects are globally active. Our practice is really intentional in response to local context. We create bespoke designs, diverse scales, geographies. As you all know, our main office is based in Boston, and I'm in Singapore, looking at the Singapore studio. And so it's so much different than many other practices are. And now, as the company has grown and over 50 years, we are like Safdie Architects is like an extended family of partners and colleagues, and we are working collaboratively with a shared spirit, really believing in transforming the firm's humanistic ideals into reality. And that's what we strongly believe in. That's where we are. And it's very interesting because that's something relates to me personally, because I truly believe in something like that. And so it's really very nice to have the same belief and continue the work in Singapore. Or in Asia, Singapore, Sri Lanka, and other parts of the world, parts of the Asian countries. And that's where we are right now.
When we talk about modern architectural landmarks like Marina Bay Sands and
Mm.
Changi Airport that refresh and sustain the urban identity of a city, they speak to a global audience, not only because of how they look, but
Mm.
also their functions and the experiences people have with them. Charu, what does it mean to you to have been so closely involved in the development of buildings that are now considered icons?
Uh, First and foremost, all clients like to ask for iconic buildings. Clients often say, we would like to get an iconic building. Just this morning, I was speaking to a potential client, and first thing he mentioned was, we want an iconic design. No one can design an icon. No one. You cannot start with, I'm going to design an icon. You can't do that. We aim to make buildings special. We aim to make buildings unique. We make a deliberate effort to create spaces that is beyond what the program or the client asks for. Creating spaces that's going to raise the level of curiosity, that's going to give pleasure or excitement to people. I think that's what we do. Because once a building creates a positive impact, it becomes an icon. I always like to give this example, and you must have also read it somewhere, where the buildings are so permanent and are permanent structures, and they make a permanent mark, in the neighborhood, on the site they're built on. So they really need to be built with a lot of undertaking, care, and good design, good construction, that sort of thing. I like to say it's like when you throw a stone into a pond, it creates ripples. A good building will create positive ripples throughout the neighborhoods, cities, and the world. And you mentioned Marina Bay Sands, which is such a great example of this ripple effect. Around the world, it's like a global phenomenon, known as a global phenomenon, symbol of Singapore. And you know it's built on a reclaimed land, and you can just see how it's transformed this reclaimed land into this vital piece of the city. It is also like a great example, for it has really demonstrated how architecture can be a catalyst for growth and development, and I think that makes a difference. I think people who come to the building are thrilled with the experience. People who, whether they are on the sky park or whether they are looking at the pool or whether they are on the promenade, just walking on the promenade during the day, evening, looking at some of the art pieces that you see over there, looking at the Art Science Museum. It's thrilling. And ArtScience Museum, the way the facade gets changes when the government or the city does displays this digital art on the facade, that itself becomes a big attractive piece. And I think that's what makes it iconic. Same thing with Jewel. Jewel is like a new design building paradigm for airports. And I think that's, and everybody now in the world, especially in the airport community, talks about Jewel. And I think that's what good buildings do. That's what these spaces do. They create places that matter to the users, that they create places that matter to the neighbors, people, community. And the most amazing part is the community, which is like in case of Singaporeans, they're so proud of these buildings. So it just shows that it's that and we are not there to design icons. It's the people who are making them iconic. And I think it's very comforting and satisfying to see that. It also puts a lot of pressure on us to make sure our next building is better than the previous one. So yes, we understand the responsibility as a team. We understand the responsibility, and I think that's what we try to achieve, something that will create a unique experience.
We've been in a couple of small conversations leading up to today, and you've been talking about several of your architectural projects with so much love. I was wondering if there's a particular project that has been especially close to your heart, or is there one that's been the most interesting one which you've worked on? And conversely, have there also been challenges that were faced by your teams while executing projects as well?
Um, it's a great question about projects that are dear to me.
Mm,
Every project has been a great learning experience for me. I've learned, actually, I must confess, I have learned more on the job than in school, because it's just changed the way things are. And every project has been a lesson where I learn something new, a new skill set, or meet new people, and understand my own shortcomings, that sort of thing. But the projects that have learned the most, the projects that have been very challenging, very demanding, are the projects where I've learned the most. And Marina Bay Sands is an example of that one, because that was why I came to Singapore, to continue working on the project from Boston. We were in Boston, and a group of us moved to Singapore. We were new to the place. We were new to this big scale of a project. This project, Marina Bay Sands, has been a game changer personally for me, as well as our office. So my colleagues and I, when we came to Singapore, it was an amazing experience that we had. And talking from my experience, I had to match my learning curve to the speed of the construction that was going on. I interacted with the best engineers in the business. I interacted with project managers, demanding project managers. I was exposed literally to the brilliant minds. I met artists, because art is such a big part of this project. I met craftsmen who did this amazing work. They've all contributed to my growth. And in fact, Marina Bay Sands has made me believe in myself, because in the beginning we were hesitating, all the stuff. It's been the growth. was so good on the project that I learned so much about myself also, and it prepared me for other projects. So even when I moved on to Jewel, now Jewel was very challenging because of the site conditions and because we were doing something that we had never done before. We were trying to create this amazing forest and the waterfall, something that you see in nature, in a concrete building. So that itself was challenging, but I was very confident that we would do it, we would deliver, because of this whole learning that I had from the previous projects. So I think projects that keep me, or projects that keep me intrigued, are the projects that challenge me. And each project is challenging, for me, for the team, for our teams, because the thing is, the challenging part is because these are mega projects or big projects. It involves multiple users, multiple types of users. Taking example of Marina Bay Sands, you have the retail program, you have the hotel program, casino, theaters, the museum program, and even the outdoors, right? So you have different stakeholders. So you are working with different stakeholders. The requirements can be conflicting with each other, from the client team. Then you go on moving with the engineers, local architects, consultants, then contractors, and there are thousands of subcontractors. So everything becomes very challenging because you have to deal with all these things and you have to balance the effort completely, making sure that everything works perfect. Contractors' mindsets are not always aligned with idealistic architects like us. They have their own challenges. Site is a challenge for them. Completion is deadlines are a challenge for them, especially particularly in Jewel, where the deadline was so firm nothing could move because it impacted the terminal. They have no patience or energy to listen to architects like me or my team telling them, no, 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 you can't do this, you can't do this, it has to be done this way. So the biggest challenge that we feel is convincing the contractors, convincing everyone around us to believe in our design, to deliver high quality work necessary for these projects. And I think, in large projects like this, where every team has their own goals, the contractors have their own goals, there's just so many conflicts. And so conflict resolution becomes a big part of our work. And this conflict resolution is not necessarily just a technical, doesn't really need just a technical solution. It needs so much of understanding of the human nature. A lot of times there are ego issues. A lot of times there are, people get upset because there's lack of mutual respect. So you have to deal with this from really a human angle, and I think that becomes a big chore. I truly believe that design ideas and architecture and drawings is only like 15% of the job. 85% is dealing with people, convincing people around you to believe in the big vision, convincing people around you that it is not about me, not about my team, it's not about Mr. Safdie, it's about the design. It's about something that is going to be realistic and it's going to be used by people around the world. That's to keep them motivated all the time, keep them inspired all the time, is a big challenge. And I think, what happens is during construction, if you disagree on something, let's say, for example, we disagree on an item and it gets missed out, it's visible on the building. So the disagreements show up on the building. So that's why we have to be really think about the whole thing. And I always keep on telling the team, if anybody fails, we fail. You know, this is such a big team effort. It's not about us. It's about the project, the end product. And I think that is the biggest challenge I feel that we face, in our profession, or at least in our office.
Mhm. Um, I remember you spoke about architecture as a sort of symphony of spaces
Mhm.
involving a very integrated whole of approach when you are bringing forth an impactful design. So I guess my next question is, what is always an integral part of the process when you and the team work on a building?
I think, what is important is first and foremost on our projects is number one is, making sure that we've convinced everybody that this is the best design solution. And I'm
Mm,
talking about from the technical point of view, but from the design point of view. So the most important thing is for us to believe in our own design and believe that this what the design is going to be, because everyone comes in at different parts of the project and they have a very tunnel vision of what they want to do. So we are, as a team, our design process in Boston, when we are doing the design in Boston, we are looking at more of a holistic approach and the solution for it. So we have to continue believe in that solution, believe in the solution that we are doing something that is going to be effective for everyone, not just person who's doing this or person who's doing that. So that's where we start, because we are talking about different stakeholders, like I said. And I could give you an example of in Jewel, that when we were looking at the Jewel, if when you've been to Jewel and you've seen when you're standing in the garden, you are in the garden. There's nothing that is distracting you. There's no retail sign that distracts you. You're sitting over there, you're surrounded by planting and the waterfall, and it feels like you are in a different world, basically. You forget you're at the airport. That was a big challenge. The challenge was, how do you convince the retail team, the leasing team, not to have any signage in the garden? Because you have restaurants opening in the garden, we really don't want to see the restaurant signage or people, eating and that kind of thing. Whereas people sitting in the restaurant can enjoy the garden too. So
Mm,
that becomes a challenge about balancing act. And I think that's something that as an office we do it well. I
mm,
think that's something, because we believe in it. We believe that, and every time it's a fine line, whether it's retail and gardens, or whether it's convention center and retail. There are just so many things, or restaurants. There's just so many things that work together, and that we try really really hard to work with all different groups of people, making sure that, yes, we are going to protect your what you're trying to do. Yes, we are going to give you what you want, but not just, we have many other people to look after. So
mm.
it just becomes a symphony of activities that we have to deal with. This is from design point of view. Construction is the same, because every subcontractor wants to just do their bit and walk away. But how do you get these groups to really make sure that they are, it's not just pieces, the pieces come together. It's like weaving on these pieces. And how do you do that? So that's where we play an important role. We are not doing the construction, but we play an important role of holding hands, making sure that there are no gaps between this person and this person. We don't want to, we want to make sure that this person doesn't walk away just doing his bit, and this guy doesn't walk away doing his bit. So that's where we build in, and that becomes like a symphony, because everyone has to play their instrument really well in order to create a wonderful music. And that's what we do. This whole coordination effort, working with together, that's what we do.
When we look at the kind of timelines, processes, the stamina that's required for ambitious, massive projects like this, from planning all the way to fruition, and the kind of intense and very nuanced collaborations that you talked about, which you and the team need to nurture with such a diverse spectrum of stakeholders, from the commercial client to public entities. How do you maintain motivation through these experiences, or how do you think about striking the balance between idealism and realism?
First and foremost, I have to tell you something. I have a wonderful boss, Mr. Moshe Safdie, who is our senior designer, partner, mentor. There's so many titles for him. Uh, Moshe is so energetic and is so passionate about work that literally flows from the top to all of us. And I think that makes a big difference. A strong leader makes a strong team. So it's the same thing. A passionate boss makes a passionate team. And I think that we always have the end product in mind. We always have that goal in mind, that, what, this is what the building is going to be. And I think that keeps us motivated. So of course, not every single day is we are successful in what we do, but every day is a new day. You're dealing with people, and you cannot just get hung up on something that did not work the day before. So one of the biggest things that in when you work with so many people, you learn is that you can't get hung up because it's all on things that you disagree with. It's at a professional level, so it's not a personal conflict with anybody. We are all trying to work in this towards in the same direction, and we all have different styles. So it just becomes a matter of adjusting and making sure that we are all working in the same direction. That becomes the goal, because the end product is what we have in mind.
Um, well, Charu, I remember the first thing that I asked you when we first connected was, how has it been like practicing architecture in a pandemic? Because it was so hard for me to fathom if it's even possible, putting architecture on automatic pilot, because of how all involving it is, seeing how, you need to commit yourself to be present in and be part of the place where you're building. I wonder if things have changed a little bit because it's been a very ever evolving situation with COVID-19. How do you manage teams and projects with care?
Well, um, one of the things that we had to really adjust in our profession during pandemic was the way we work. Software industry and other industries always had a way of working from home or working from a remote place. Whereas we, as architects, we always need to be on the site or talk to the contractors personally, and you have to be there in person. So that was the biggest adjustment we had to make.
Mm.
It's amazing how we evolved. Even the Zoom calls evolved. We found out a way of working together with the contractors. We found out a way of collaborating. It was intense, something that would take 5 minutes now took half hour, because everybody had to get there, we had to see it, kind of stuff. But eventually we took all the care and started going to the meetings on site and started working with the site, of course, taking all the precautionary measures and things, the way whatever the government had told us. So we did that, and I think it was not so much about the physical work that the pandemic was challenging. It was more about people started thinking differently. The clients and architects and everybody have started thinking differently from the pandemic. For us, I think pandemic is a temporary situation. Even though it's lasted for a couple of years, it's still a temporary situation in our profession. What pandemic really highlighted to us is the way we work in terms of the way we design. Our projects have been designed before the pandemic. The projects that are under construction have been designed before the pandemic. And because of our design philosophy, because of the way we work, and because of our basic belief in natural light, ventilation, connection to nature, making sure that we are creating a healthy environment,
Mm.
that has really highlighted that we were on the right path. And it's really emphasized the fact that, whatever we've been doing, we need to emphasize it even more on projects now, on the future projects, or the projects that we are designing, because it is so successful. I received emails from Sky Habitat, from some of the people living there, saying how wonderful it was that everything was in lockdown, but they could step out on the terraces and sit out. They could step on the link bridges that connect the two towers and enjoy with their family. And I thought that, wow, that's something that's really good. That's something we've done well. Where you see in Singapore, you see malls, and malls are really just the malls, and all the malls were closed. But then Jewel could open because Jewel had the garden space. People could come and visit the garden space. And I think some of the things that we've designed, I think really make a difference with that, has made a difference.
Still on the topic of practicing architecture in times that are on one hand complicated and challenging, but on the other hand very inspiring and daring, and just looking at how the pandemic is providing an opportunity to reconsider how we relate to our spaces. So here's a speculative question, Charu. At its core, design is inherently a futurist medium. What do you think is the mission of architects in this new endemic COVID era? And also, I'm just wondering, in your opinion, what would a Singapore that's designed to coexist with the pandemic look like?
Um, I think one of the things that we learned in pandemic is that buildings cannot have a singular use, particularly public buildings cannot have a singular use. A mall needs to be more than a mall. Uh, an office building cannot just be offices stacked in a high tower, and with no ability to open windows or look outside or step outside. I think residential buildings without terraces and balconies that we have some in Singapore, you can see them, do not work because in pandemic, if you're not able to go out, you are stuck in the small apartments, in the small units. And I think that is very, very difficult for people living there, and it has an impact on your mental health. So, one of the things that we've been very successful in doing before the pandemic, there's always for the last 50 years, in creating spaces that create healthy environment, that bring the natural light, that connect people to nature. Whether it's a residential building like Sky Habitat, which allows people to step out in the balconies and enjoy nature, or step out on the terraces and look outside and enjoy the sunsets, or even the connecting public spaces that we have created, seating in areas such a way that families can sit with, even with isolate and sit. They're not really rubbing against each other, but they're like little spaces that we've created. All this has helped them. All this has was really helpful. I'm working on an office building right now, a headquarters for Sarvana Jerome. So instead of creating these big buildings, which is the headquarters, which is typically what you see in Singapore as a headquarters, is like a big, like a couple of floors in a building. Instead of that, we've created these smaller buildings, like pavilions. They're like 5, 6 story buildings, but they are located in such a way that they have gardens, exterior gardens outside, as well as there are interior garden spaces. So that footprint of the building or the floor plan allows natural light to filter in from all directions, allows people to visually connect with nature, allows people to step out and walk in nature. And I think all these things are going to help the people working there. I think it's going to be a natural setting that's going to improve their productivity. I mean, there are just so many studies done about connection to nature and productivity, and the increase in productivity. That's definitely going to have an impact. And this is not something new. This is taken from Singapore. Singapore as a garden city, Singapore is striving to be a city in the garden, not like a garden in the city. And that's the inspiring part that we have in most of our projects. Whether you go to Jewel and see that people enjoying, you don't have to shop. You can sit in the garden and enjoy your time over there. Eat something nice in the restaurant and sit in the garden, enjoy your time. You don't need to shop. You don't need to go to Jewel because you need to shop. That's one of those things that you give different functions. And I think that really helps. And these are the things that I really, really hope that architects understand and designers understand moving into the future, that whatever we design or whatever buildings we create, it needs to function just more than what the program is. In our projects, we make a deliberate effort to create spaces for the community.
Mm.
Take example of Marina Bay Sands. The pool is enjoyed by the people, but we have a beautiful observation deck, which is enjoyed by the public. I mean, that's such an amazing space on a cantilever. It's like a great experience. The promenade at Marina Bay Sands, instead of just creating a space, we have created this promenade with planting, with art, with just so many things happening in that area that you can see how busy and wonderful it is. People collect there in the evening with their families to see the laser show, the light show. I think all these things make the space interesting. And I think that's something that we need to think about as we move ahead, creating something for the community within a building. No developer is going to ask you to do it. No client is going to spend money doing it. You have to do a design in such a way it becomes an integral part of the design. And that will make the building successful and that will make the building iconic.
Still on the topic of looking ahead to the future, but maybe bringing the question closer to you, Charu. What is the next step for you? Are there any other exciting projects in the firm's works that you can perhaps share with us?
Our next step is I am working on a couple of very interesting buildings, and these buildings are totally in line with our firm's philosophy, and as well as with the goal of creating this amazing spaces, happy spaces. And that's what I'm working on. I'm working on a residential tower, a hotel, as well as I mentioned, the project for the headquarters project for Saban
Mm,
and Shillong. As well as we are doing some other projects around, in other places in the country. But one of my personal goals now is to have a positive impact, not just with the building, but also with the work I do personally. And I think that's one of my projects, really, my personal project, is to make deliberate effort to create a positive impact in everything I do. And of course, professionally, because of the work we do, because of Safdie Architects, that that is that has made it easier for me to do create this impact. But also in my personal life, in other work that I do, I am doing my best to create this positive impact wherever I go. Making sure I inspire people, making sure I motivate them to do whatever they do in a better way.
I would love to wrap up our conversation, Charu, with a lightning round of quick-fire questions if you are open to it.
Sure, let's try.
Let's do it. Okay. Um, which three words encapsulate architecture to you?
Wow, you know. Architecture to me is something that is inspiring. For me, that's really a thing that I look at buildings and spaces inspiring. Um, I think people,
Mm,
that is something that I feel is important. And I think hard work. I cannot deny the fact and lie to you. It's a lot of hard work. So architecture for me is not just buildings. You see, architecture for me is the process.
mm.
The building is the end result for the users, but architecture for us is the process. So to be inspired to design for the people and really work hard to get there, that's architecture to me.
Second question, what makes a good architect?
Oh, wow. For me, a good architect is someone who believes that the building or the work that we are doing is much bigger than themselves. So it's not about a singular entity. It's not about one person. It is not about me. It is about a collective effort that we all put together to do it. The design may be ours, but the building belongs to someone else, the users. So I think for me that is a good architect.
What is the most challenging thing about your discipline?
I think convincing people to believe in the design, convincing
Mm,
people to believe in our vision, no matter what the circumstances are, keeping them motivated and inspiring them to do better. I think that's the most challenging part that we have to all follow because it can really easily go the other way very fast.
and you also spoke about it being the most integral part of the process as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. Charu, what have you learned about yourself in your time practicing architecture?
Well, I'm still learning, I'm not there yet, but I am getting good working with people. I'm getting good at resolving conflicts, and I'm also good getting better at motivating people. Because as I motivate people, I get motivated myself, to do better. So I
Mm.
think long way to go though.
What excites you about where architecture might be headed?
I think I am excited to the fact that there's so much of awareness right now about sustainability, awareness about people, about the building, the way it connects to nature and natural areas. I think that excites me. I think people are taking designers and developers and everybody are taking a step back and rethinking the whole thing. I think that excites me.
If you could have the opportunity to work with someone from any time period across any industry, who would it be and why?
Wow, there's so many people, though. I can't even name one. There's just so many people that I would love to work with and learn from, because I get inspired very easily. I get motivated very easily, and I'm impressed by the way how things have worked out until now and how people work. So I really can't tell you, say, use name, just mention names. I have Moshe Safdie, who's very inspiring. I meet so many inspiring artists along the way. The work you guys do is inspiring. The exhibits that you all do is inspiring. Every time I look at them, I'm like, oh my God, wow, this is so amazing. So, I mean, we live in an amazing world. Again, it's just very inspiring all the time.
My last question for you is, if you had just one piece of advice for young architects who are just getting started, what would that be?
I don't know if it's one piece of advice or not, but I would tell them to be open minded and be flexible. Not just, don't, because every project is a new experience. So you can't close your mind and say, oh, this is what I know and this is what I'm going to do. And secondly, what I want to tell them is that always think about the community you're designing for and not just about the building program that you get on a piece of paper. The building program is limited because of the person who's writing it. They want to see these things. But that doesn't mean that you cannot add your own bit to it. And I think that's where the community thing comes all the time, is very important, because you have to think about your neighbor, the neighbors, the community. And I think that will make the design more wholesome. And I think that would result in a great building.
Charu, thank you so much for making time to do this wonderfully multifaceted sharing with us and for the community. On behalf of everyone at ArtScience Museum, we wish you and the amazing teams at Safdie Architects our very best. And also thank you to all of you who have been spending your time with us across the duration of this talk as well. Would like to share that our education specialists are guiding experiential tours of ArtScience Museum's building. That's designed by Moshe Safdie and lovingly worked on by Charu and the team at Safdie Architects. Buckminster Fuller was a key influence during the early career of Moshe Safdie, who drew inspiration from Fuller's lifelong experimentation. In addition to exploring the building's green features and sharing about how the location shaped its architectural plans, these tours would also trace how Fuller's vision comes full circle at the museum. In the chapter of Radical Curiosity exhibition as well, Moshe Safdie also spoke about Fuller's influence on his work and thinking as he reflected on his architectural practice spanning 50 years. If you'd like to lean further into the core ideas, projects, and precepts in Fuller's work, do tune in to the online lecture presented by guest curators Rosa Parra and Jose Luis Vivente. It's a beautiful presentation that looks at the comprehensive relevance of his ideas, how his influence continues to make itself present today and in contemporary visions of the future. Most importantly, we do hope you get a chance to visit the exhibition, which runs until 10th of July, and perhaps join us in some of these companion programs if you're able to. You can, of course, get more details and stay up to date with everything that's happening at the museum on our website, Facebook page, and YouTube channel. Thank you so much again, Charu. Please keep very well, and we wish you our very best for your forthcoming projects.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure. And I must say that the exhibit on Buckminster Fuller is so intriguing and so amazing. I've seen it like twice now, and I still want to go and visit one more time. So it's really a great exhibit.
Would love to have you back. Thank you. See you again, everyone.